A Vindication of the Rights of Women. General Notes. This book was written by Mary Wollstonecraft. She was a prominent women's rights supporter, and she dedicated this book to a person called Jean-Jacques Rousseau. At the time, he was supporting limiting the education of women down to a general at-home type of deal. Women would have to be educated at home, while men would have to be educated in schools, despite his views on empowering people, pushing for equality, that sort of thing. She opposed the view that women should only have a domestic education and would be very, very, very argumentative when people met her. When she met her husband, the first time they met, they argued through the night. Her deal was the right to equality of treatment in education in this book. Now, this book is really important because it deals with the association of ideas. The basis of your trail of thought is dependent on your education. And people would criticize women for simply repeating what they were taught, teaching girls that beauty equals getting ahead in life, getting more station, getting a husband, automatically makes them harlots for doing exactly what people teach them. If you teach a woman, hey, you should get really, really pretty and beautiful so that you can seduce men, then obviously they would seduce men. And those same men go around criticizing them for, being harlots for no reason. Because women's minds equal evil power over men. That sort of nonsense. Also, she really didn't like novelists because, well, at the time, they were the most popular people around, and they were basically like the Backstreet Boys in the 90s. I mean, I know we like sometimes seeing them in movies, randomly doing stuff, but back in the 90s, I would imagine that most people thinking about the Backstreet Boys would be like, Justin Bieber. Why? Why Twilight? Why? Like, but she didn't really hate them that much because they were basically just the only thing to fill the void. The void in women's minds. She viewed them as the only thing that filled the void in women's minds until more educated women could come along and teach those women important stuff like philosophy or politics and the way of the world, different things, valuable mental things. She was also very obviously Mary Shelley's mom, and Mary Shelley's dad was a guy called William Godwin. William Godwin was an anarchist, which doesn't mean current day cliche anarchist. Let's throw a bomb at everything that we see because anarchy and anarchy and anarchy and stuff. No, anarchism was an actual political party back in the day, and only later at say the 1890s that really become this associated with this symbol of someone throwing a bomb, therefore anarchism. Of course, in the 1890s, it doesn't make sense that it was the anarchists that threw the bomb because it was for its time, a relatively modern bomb. And why did the cops not find anything? Basically, the police were corrupt, and it was probably the cops, and that's whole slander. But this whole modern perception of anarchism ties in with the themes of the book. Vindication of the rights of women. For example, if you have a spider, you would think, oh, a spider, a thing with 8 legs. If you're taught throughout your life that a spider is this little thing, this creepy thing that crawls on webs, that scares women, your mind would go instantly to it's scary, not it's small or it's gross. Whatever is emphasized in the association gets emphasized in your mind. That's something that a lot of modern feminists forget to point out, and when they're explaining stuff, like in the 18th century, basically, it was a lot of the stuff was about the realization that there is no God and the Bible is bullshit. A lot of the philosophy was basically about that. So I remember at some point someone published, I think it was Mesopotamian or possibly older. It was one of the Gilgamesh stories. A story found in one of the Gilgamesh tablets, I believe. And basically, someone published something about there being a Mesopotamian Moses or something like that. So people, minds who spend their lives thinking, oh, Bible, 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 Bible. Wait, what? There's another version of Moses who's not in the Bible? How come? So, your mind associates the Bible as the one thing that is true. But if the Bible is a compilation of different stories compiled in the 400s, how can, and I don't like the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church compiled those stories, why should I believe them? I mean, why does new parts of the Bible talk about the right of something or other, and don't these parts of the Bible contradict each other? You know, basically people realized that there is no God, and mythology is just that, mythology, just folk tales. So a lot of the 18th century and late 17th, the 1700s, 1800s period was about coming to grips with their not being a god, and where do we go from there? Now, not everyone's philosophy was directly about that. A lot of philosophies were about, well, let me defend God and whatever, but there was a de-emphasization of, well, the Bible says everything, and people were more forming their identities as humans in society. So if I was someone who's poor and I lived in a world with bourgeoisie, like, why couldn't I marry a handsome girl from the bourgeoisie? And none of us like kings and whatever, and that whole thing. So her book, in pointing out the association of ideas, essentially refers to something which in modern day we're talking about intertext. So, say I was in the 90s and I heard a story, and I saw the Beauty and the Beast movie. If I see a flower in a glass casing, I would automatically assume that with the Beauty and the Beast movie. On the other hand, if I saw the glass, casket in which Sleeping Beauty was lying around and she was holding a rose on her chest, I might associate that image with either or. But if the glass casing was a little bit curved, I would probably think about Beauty and the Beast. If I seen more Beauty and the Beast imagery, I would probably more heavily emphasize Beauty and the Beast to the concept of a rose behind glass. So, let me try and explain this to you this way. So, in 1992, Beauty and the Beast comes out. A couple of years later, you see it on TV or whatever, and it's Beauty and the Beast. It's Beauty and the Beast. You associate the flower and the thing. But then, years later, in the 2000s, you hear about Porphyria, and you don't immediately associate that with Beauty and the Beast because you have no reason to associate that with Beauty and the Beast. You heard it from a werewolf documentary. But then in the teens, or tweens or whatever, you hear about George R.R. Martin, who has written for a series called Beauty and the Beast. And you're like, wait, there's a series? Beauty and the Beast 1992 wasn't an original idea? And then you look at the 1980s Beauty and the Beast thing, and suddenly it creeps into you, oh, that's why I see Chewbacca-like creatures in so many TV shows, right? That makes total sense with, lion-faced Chewbacca in TV shows like Dark Angel Season 2 had like a lion-faced Chewbacca in it, type person in it. And your mind immediately starts piecing together all these associations. Oh, you're a beast, and you blah, 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 whatever. The point is, you recently saw Once Upon a Time, and you saw Rumpelstiltskin and Belle. then the Kirsten Crook Beauty and the Beast TV show on CW came out, and it's like, why am I watching this? But I have to be watching this. But why am I watching this? And it's like they basically replaced Clark with a newer model, and you're like, Kirsten Crook, Lana in Smallville was a bitch. I'm just saying, Lana in Smallville was a bitch. And it's just so lame, and I don't want to watch this, and I stopped watching the thing. And it was so stupid. It had nothing to do with the Beauty and the Beast concept. He had scars in the first season, and that made it kind of like a Beauty and the Beast thing, but then he got rid of the scars, and it's a terrible show. Don't watch it. But the 1980s show seems like it had potential. So R.R. Martin was like, my guy butchers people and then goes back home and reads poetry. And then you find out about the late 1800s play and how people would use smoke in people's hands. People would blast smoke into the hands of the beast in that play. And then you find out that it actually ties into the Porphyria story that you heard about in that werewolf documentary. Now, Porphyria, this massive hair growth, people basically grow fur around their bodies. And before you've associated that to the werewolf concept. Now, if you grew up in the 80s, you might associate Beauty and the Beast more with Chewbacca. If you grew up in the 90s, you were a teenager in the 90s, you might more easily associate Beauty and the Beast with werewolves. If you grew up in the mid-2000s, if you were a teen in the mid-2000s, you wouldn't associate Porphyria with Beauty and the Beast at all. But now, you might associate Beauty and the Beast with Porphyria. You also might know about the adaptation of Beastly, which might lead you to associate the flower in the glass casket with Hellraiser, actually. Like the Hot Topic version of Hellraiser. Not quite Hot Topic, but like a really, really bad version of Hellraiser. Face on a Beauty and the Beast story with that guy from Item Number 4. It wasn't that great. It wasn't terrible, but Beastly was just not that great. But if you know all the stuff, you might more easily associate the flower in the glass casket to the several hundred years ago story of a person with porphyria and how his marriage was arranged to a girl who didn't know who she was marrying because there was a tradition at the time, and the queen, who was at the time owning those two people, she had them get married, and you can make assumptions about whether or not those two were in love or whether they hated each other, and your mind can go there to a time of real prejudice and real strife. And you can go either way with the association of a flower inside a glass. Either something deeply important a couple hundred years ago, royalty controlling people, so on and so forth, or werewolves, or the ridiculousness of the ridiculousness that is Beastly and Kristen Krug, or you might actually, through the werewolves, reassociate the idea of Beauty and the Beast with the ending from American Werewolf in London, which was very kind of like that moment from King Kong, where it was Beauty that the Beast. Like the 2004 version of King Kong. I haven't watched the other ones. I've browsed the other ones, but I hadn't fully watched the other ones, except for the new one, which was kind of okay, but it wasn't the 2004 version. The 2004 version was really the best thing I would possibly associate with King Kong, but I would have to rewatch the black and white King Kong. So there's so many associations, so much value, the intertext, the value of association of a thing. You have this text in your head that you can that is the value of an object that you see. And Beauty and the Beast is a very good example for this. And it can actually tie into Mary Shelley's daughter, because Frankenstein is becoming kind of like a romance option. And what better person to associate with the concept of the beast than Frankenstein? So, but then if you try to do that, you'd have to look into Mary Shelley's actual history and how she wrote the book Frankenstein. And it was at a time where the entire planet had this really dim summer because of a volcano erupting. Early 1800s. I think it was either 1807 or 1817. And she actually got into a writing competition in Lord Byron's place. And Lord Byron, if you know who Lord Byron is, and you know the history of Lord Byron and women, you'd know that Lord Byron was one of those Victorian era dads who would divorce their wives, and when those wives would try to meet their children, they would be stopped and they wouldn't have any recourse. Literally, there's this story where basically Lord Byron's wife got her dead son she was literally it was a fucked up thing. I don't think I should go into it. If I do, I'll have to waste more than half an hour, and I'm already running too long in this note. So the association of ideas essentially is a 200-year-old explanation of what intertext is, the thing that I explained intertext being. And Mary Shelley's mom, Mary Wollstonecraft, was married to Mary Shelley's dad, but she also had a daughter from a previous husband. And Mary Shelley's actual husband actually played both of the sisters, both of Mary Wollstonecraft's kids, and he had a sexual relationship with both of them. And Mary Shelley, essentially, she miscarried a child. And this child literally ties into the whole Frankenstein idea, because it's a child that has been thrown away. And if you've seen the play version of Frankenstein, you'd know that Frankenstein is the doctor, and the monster is what we call nicknamed Frankenstein. Frankenstein's monster, after he's thrown away, he ends up with an old man. He talks with this old man, and when this old man's kids see him, they flip out, and essentially the old man ends up dying, and the monster, which has educated himself with this, associates human rejection with this really vile thing, where his heart keeps getting broken, and that also ties into the movie Frankenstein scene, this famous Louis scene where he plays with a little girl and accidentally kills her. But in the play that I've seen with both of the two Sherlocks, American Sherlock Holmes and British Sherlock, Doctor Strange, the monster, basically he's this malicious force when he meets his dad again. He kills people around him. He actually rapes his dad's wife. And it's this, and in the 90s movie, we get this, and the play, we get this scene where he ends up in the Arctic for some reason. And it's this haunting scene where the creature maliciously messes with Frankenstein as he's moving along, and there's this scenery of winds of snow misting up and things, and you get this ominous sense of but more this tragedy of what happened with Frankenstein, the doctor. And it's Mary Shelley's mom died, Mary Wollstonecraft, and Mary Shelley lost her kids. So is the doctor Mary Shelley's mom and she's maliciously messing with her, or is it the kid being mad at his mom because he died and Mary Shelley couldn't protect him? So you have this idea about mothers and sons, or parents and sons, and then there's the question of, was Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's husband, who also meddled around with her sister, and is the whole monster wanting a bride thing an association with Mary Shelley's sister and infidelity? So there's so many associations of ideas in Frankenstein that tie directly into this flower in a glass casing. So we have four avenues of thought here. You can have this tragic story of a couple hundred years ago where people were controlled by this monarch and a person was literally moved around like an animal, uh, and there's a sociological experimentation with him and his wife, and then you have the Werewolf Association with American Werewolf in London, and I can go on with that. I can associate that title to the original American Werewolf and how that differs from American Werewolf in London, and I can further associate with the Wolfman, and I can associate so much. And I can even make a reference to how Dracula uses werewolves and the Dracula's guest storylines and so on. And I can also go the pop, really cheery, really fun time stuff with this. It's not really fun, and it's just it was just, why Beastly? Why Kirsten Krug? Why? And then we can go into this powerful rights of women in society, early 1800s, late 1700s type thing. And Mary Wollstonecraft actually died when Mary Shelley and her sister were children, so Mary Shelley didn't really know her mom. Actually, I think Mary Shelley was so young, she was actually just, Wollstonecraft might have died at childbirth or right after childbirth. So it's these whole abandonment issues or these whole death issues, and all of this stuff is tied directly to this flower surrounded by a glass casing. Because I made it so. I just rerouted your brain to associate something like 20 different stories to a single idea, and there was no actual connection between the flower in the glass and Mary Shelley's mom, Mary Wollstonecraft. Mary Wollstonecraft didn't put a picture of a flower in the glass, and there is this association of idea theme there. Also, it should be noted that Mary Shelley's dad, Mary Wollstonecraft's husband, he was an anarchist, and he made his money by publishing these children's books, which were heavy on ideas, at a time where the idea was kids shouldn't be given too many ideas because that fosters, this sense of sin. There's an idea that kids and ideas equal sin at the time, where Mary Shelley's husband, Mary Shelley's father, Mary Wollstonecraft's husband, the father that would raise Mary Shelley, he his books were all about giving kids ideas because he thought that a lot of ideas would help kids foster empathy inside kids. So, on the one hand, Mary Shelley did become this great, powerful figure in history, and she hung around with Lord Byron, and she was this powerful author. But on the other hand, Mary Shelley's husband and her sister were in this bizarre relationship where she was hanging around with this guy who also slept with her sister, and openly in front of her, and they were like all together. And actually, I don't know if Mary Shelley actually slept with her sister or not. I don't know. And there's these things, there's all these Victorian era juicy bits there that you can make a story out of. And all this stuff, basically, I can associate this flower in a glass with all of these ideas. All of these ideas. In part because this book, A Vindication of the Rights of Women, talked about the association of ideas, what we now call intertext. And that's why this book is so important.